Desperate, I watched Forrest out of the corner of my eye. He seemed to watch me in return, though his eyes constantly flicked back to the road. I saw the headlights reflecting off strange eyes in the alleyways of the buildings, but whenever I turned to look, only the shadows remained. I had my seatbelt on, but Forrest didn't. He must have felt confident in his abilities and unconcerned with a car crash. I knew he had power and quickly formulated a suicide plan. I accelerated the car. Ahead of us, I saw a light pole with a long, dead, desiccated corpse hanging from the fraying noose. I tried to line up the passenger side of the car directly with the metal pole. Holding my breath, I closed my eyes as the car closed the last few feet, still accelerating, the engine roaring. I couldn't have been going more than about 40 miles an hour, but it sent Forrest flying through the shattered windshield. The driver's side airbag deployed, smashing me in the face so hard I saw stars. I felt blood gushing from my nose, and the world seemed to go dark for a few seconds. The engine hissed, spitting coolant and transmission fluid in great steaming gouts that puddled under the car. After regaining my senses, I looked up to see Forrest. He lay on the hood of the car, moaning and moving his hands in random circles. Blood streamed from a deep gash on his skull and covered his inhuman face. He wasn't smiling anymore. Stumbling, my fingers trembling, I undid the seatbelt and opened the driver's door, falling on the cracked pavement below. I breathed hard, then, with a sudden burst of will, I pushed myself up. Forrest was still grunting incoherently, apparently unaware of where he was. I heard him repeating the same nonsense over and over again. He said, clenching and unclenching his twisted fingers. I thought of just choking him then and there, while he was seemingly weak and defenseless. But I didn't know how defenseless he actually was, even in his weakened state. Moreover, I had no idea how to get back to my world, and killing the only being who I felt sure knew the way might backfire spectacularly, dooming me here for the rest of my life. I decided to book it as fast as I could and leave him there, bleeding on the crumbling front of my car. I started walking fast, stumbling slightly as pain rang out in my legs. When I felt I had mostly regained my balance after the crash, I started jogging. Looking back towards the car, I saw him getting up, trying to push himself off the hood of the car with his long, strange fingers. He fell back down on the hood, then reached down with a shaking hand and took something out of his bound leather satchel, placing it in his mouth. I took a left into the first alley I found. The whole city was a horror show, a deluge of nightmares. Rotting corpses lay everywhere, and I saw a dumpster at the end of the alleyway filled to the brim with body parts. Decomposing legs, arms, chests, and hands, all sliced off before being thrown into the dumpster haphazardly, like common refuse. One hand limply reached out, as if trying to motion for help. It had blackened fingernails, and the thumb was missing. The body parts overflowed the dumpster, a cloud of bugs buzzing around it. The smell as I got near was overwhelming. I gagged, moving to the side of the alley, trying to put as much distance between myself and that dumpster as humanly possible. It was an odd, rotting tomato mixed with feces and rancid meat odor. But before I left that city, I would see and smell much worse than that. I took random turns, left and right through the streets and the alleyways, trying to put as much distance between myself and Forrest as possible. Paranoid, I kept hearing imaginary footsteps, but it was always just the echoes of my own. In one alleyway, I saw what looked like a mutated raccoon standing at the far end. It was the size of a German shepherd, with huge tumors and fibrous growths all over its body. I saw a fifth paw hanging from underneath its stomach, boneless and stunted. It gnawed on the corpse of an old woman that had long since desiccated, chewing open her bones and trying to suck out the marrow with its twisted, stained teeth. The raccoon didn't notice me, or the strange silhouette slowly sneaking up behind it. As soon as I saw movement, I quickly looked around and saw a stainless steel garbage can with dark, thick fluid that dripped from the exterior. When I hurriedly peered down, part of me expected to see Forrest's inhuman grinning face in there. But what I found was nearly as horrible. I saw the garbage can was filled with rotting dogs and cats, piled one on top of another like cordwood. For a moment I was so horrified that I almost forgot what I was doing. Then my brain screamed at me to move, to hide, and I lunged to the side, hoping the man on the far end of the alley hadn't seen me. I held my breath, trying not to inhale the overwhelmingly rancid stench that radiated from the can. Decomposing animal flesh smells different from rotting human corpses, as anyone with experience in both can attest. Rotting corpses always had more of a rotten tomato smell with a hint of sewage, compared with the musky odor that mixed in with the putrefied meat smell of dead animals. Both were absolutely horrible, some of the worst smells I had ever experienced. At first I thought it was some sort of deformed monster with irregular growths and fibrous tissue standing out all over its body. Then I saw it was just a man, some sort of mutant or victim of a genetic disorder or radiation, maybe something even worse. He had a bat with nails sticking out of it, and before the mutated raccoon could turn its head, he had whipped the far end of the bat into the top of its skull. The raccoon crumbled to the ground with a soft exhalation of air. My first instinct was to run, but something in the man's demeanor made me think he wasn't the monster I first believed. He walked in a childish way and talked to himself. I could hear the sad words he muttered in a low voice, echoing off the brick walls of the alley. "More raccoon. I'm so sick of eating raccoon alone every night. I wish I could find some more jerky. Remember when we found the big stash of jerky in the bunker? I shouldn't have eaten it all. So dumb. Dumb, Frank. Never thinking about the future." He whacked himself hard on the side of his deformed head. "Hello?" I called out, overriding my better judgment. I had few options, trapped in this strange, dead city in another world. The man who had just started dragging the raccoon corpse away by the scruff of the neck immediately froze, his face a comical mask of confusion. He didn't seem scared at all, but now he noticed me for the first time as I stepped out from behind the garbage can. "What's a normie like you doing in the city?" he asked. I saw one eye had a slanting look, like a fold of skin had partially grown over the lid. The other widened comically in surprise as he saw my clothes. "You look like ones who came through from the stairway. Never turned out good, I tell you. They don't know what they're doing, coming down those stairs." He dropped the raccoon body and quickly strode over to me, moving much faster than his size would suggest. He put out his huge, scarred hand. I stared at it for a moment, confused, then reached out and shook it. I felt his iron grip crush my bones and tried not to wince. I looked at him closer and realized he looked similar to the Elephant Man, except far more solidly built and mobile. He had the same strange growths emerging from his face and body, however. They didn't hide the bulging muscles underneath, though. "I'm Frankie," he said, smiling, showing his few remaining teeth. "Used to live here with my family." He motioned to the destroyed ruins of the city around him. "But after the bombs, my mama, she disappeared. I miss her. I keep looking, hoping I'll see her again, but I don't think she's here anymore. I think I'm all alone now." He looked like he was about to cry, and I had no idea what to say. "I'm Jason. Sorry about your mother, Frankie. Do you know your way around this place?" His sad expression evaporated, and he smiled again. The corners of his mouth formed a partial smile, which seemed as far as they could manage. Made me feel sad to watch him. He had a sense of innocence and friendliness that contrasted heavily with the hellish conditions surrounding him. He seemed like he was mentally somewhat slow, but he also had a sense of confidence in his ability to survive in this apocalyptic wasteland, which I admired. "Course, didn't I say I grew up here? There's a building near here. It's real strange, though. Changes often. The passageways move around. The doors switch places. It leads down. They're very deep. I don't go down to the bottom. It's filled with horrible things. I was about to respond when I heard a strange humming noise. It sounded ethereal, almost like a gong or a singing bowl. Yet the sound also seemed to get into my bones and made my eyes water. Even now, a few years later, my eyes water just thinking about it. It was one of the most jarring and horrendous sounds I'd ever heard. Frankie's eyes widened in horror. He dropped the raccoon and grabbed me by the arm. He ran towards the street. Soon as we came out on the street, my breath caught in my throat. One of the largest buildings I'd ever seen stood there, the color of polished silver. I saw windows spiraling around the exterior of it, like the stairs of a lighthouse. Looking up, I couldn't even see the top of it. It seemed to simply fade into the dirty gray clouds above my head. "No time to look now," Frankie whispered, a tone of urgency in his voice. "Come on." He pulled me forward and over to the huge building, across 12 lanes of cracked concrete and rubble. He ran into the shattered glass door of the massive skyscraper. I heard shards of glass and rusted nails crackling under my steel-toed shoes, and I was glad I'd come from work and hadn't been wearing sandals. That humming seemed more insistent, higher pitched, and closer. I turned to look quickly and saw Forrest coming out of the alley, a look of fury and hatred twisting his bleached white face. His eyes blazed and he kept snapping his head to the left and right, almost certainly looking for me. As he got closer, the humming grew louder, and I saw him holding the same pebble he had held to the demonic boy's face as he died. Though tiny, gave off a strange black light that threw twisting shadows over the rubble and ruined building outside. I realized with horror that he was using it as some sort of tracking device to find me, and very likely kill me. He still had dried blood staining his face, and I saw fresh drops running down his scalp. He ignored them and, like a bloodhound berserker with the scent of his prey, moved towards me. "You need to hide," Frankie said urgently as he pointed at the corner of the lobby. I saw a hatchway sitting open. "The bunker! Let's go!" Without any more urging, I sprinted towards it. Frankie went down first and I followed. As I poked my head out and reached up to grab the hatch, I saw Forrest only feet down the shattered glass door of the skyscraper. As quickly as possible, I lowered the hatch, pulling out my phone to shine some light and turned the steel wheel to lock it inside. I used the light to catch up with Frankie, who seemed to know the tunnels so well that he could navigate them in the dark. He turned his deformed face towards me, smiling and excited, childish glee evident from his expression. "He won't be getting through that. That's a bomb door. It was built for the big ones, the H-bomb and the antimatter one." "What is this place?" I asked. "They call it Sanctuary. There's an entire underground town in here. There's where General Matheson used to run his government from. It goes up 2 stories. How do they build so big?" I shook my head. I don't know. "So do people live down here?" He frowned at the question, thinking for a long moment. Then his eyes widened. "People? No people." "Okay, no people. So what does that mean?" "Well, other things do like to live down here. It's a big place, you know. Even I haven't explored most of it, but sometimes the pigmen get in here, and the snakes. I usually run when the snakes get in here," he said with a shudder. "What kind of snakes?" I asked. Like rattlesnakes?" His expression stayed stoic for a long moment as he considered the question. Then he began to laugh, a sound like a child amused by a dirty joke. "You mean those little ones with the rattles on their tails in the desert? No. I mean snakes. Usually about my height, and as long as..." He pointed down the end of the tunnel, a few 100 feet away, and I groaned. "Some people also think General Matheson lives under Sanctuary, but the tunnel's further down for hundreds of length, you know." I didn't know what a length was, but when he explained it in his slow, plodding way, I figured out it meant about half a mile. So I guessed, anyway. Why would General Matherson live down here? I said, genuinely curious. The story Forrest had told me had intrigued me. It reminded me of certain events that had occurred on Earth. My Earth, though nothing nearly as catastrophic as this. He disappeared during the war. He was last seen in Sanctuary, running down the stairs when the antimatter bomb hit. True believers still think General Matherson is down here, waiting to come back and lead everyone into glory and power. He gave a low laugh. The Iron Servant have looked, though, and they haven't seen a bit of him. I think he's dead. I think he's been dead. But some people will never believe that. I wondered if he was right when the ground started to shake. I thought it might be an earthquake, but Frankie's horror seemed to suggest much more than that. "The snakes," he whispered, his eyes haunted. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story? Or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad and Unicorn Hollow for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Saikat, Lee Kendall, Janet, and Chris Kinsella for being our spooky skeleton tier contributors. And, of course, thanks to Xaronan, Winter, Tyler Parker, Stephanie Carrington, Sarah ASMR, Hi Stacy, Emily Coltsfoot, and Cinnamon Fox, and Bella Lee for being our ghostly reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. As I said, if you'd like to have your name read out at the end of every episode that I make, and maybe get a little more, come on down to Patreon and sign up, or become a member on YouTube. Ghostly Reader tier contributors get a book anytime I write one, which is usually about twice a year. So, what are you waiting for? Come on down and give it a look. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.